Millionaire buys steel mill and finds two little girls sewing in suffocating exhaustion. He freezes. Before we dive into this extraordinary story of survival, betrayal, and second chances, I want you to ask yourself one thing. What would you do if beneath all the wealth and steel you stumbled upon a world you weren't supposed to see? Let's begin. Dear friend, what you're about to experience is not just a story. It's a deeply human journey about lost resilience and the quiet, unexpected ways love finds us when we need it most. If this is your first time here, I invite you to drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing your voice. And if you're someone who believes in second chances, in the hidden strength of ordinary people, and in stories that stay with you long after they end, consider subscribing and tapping the bell icon. We share moments that matter. Thank you for being part of this one. Now, let's begin. The rain lashed against the windshield as Victor Hastings pulled into the empty lot on Portland's industrial waterfront. The towering skeleton of the old Pearl District steelworks stood abandoned, a forgotten monument to the city's working-class roots. To Victor, it was just another investment opportunity. He'd made a fortune flipping neglected properties into luxury condos and chic office spaces. At 42, Victor was the face of modern American success. Sharp suits, faster cars, a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling views of the Willamette River. He moved through life with precision, his heart long buried beneath layers of strategy and ambition. That afternoon, accompanied only by his realtor and a set of heavy iron keys, Victor arrived to inspect his latest acquisition, a rusted shell he planned to turn into Portland's next creative hub. The steel doors groaned open, revealing cavernous halls soaked in the scent of oil and time. His footsteps echoed through the empty corridors. Victor liked moments like this, standing at the edge of potential, envisioning profit where others saw decay. He took out his phone, already calculating square footage and projected ROI. But then he heard something. A faint, rhythmic hum. Mechanical yet fragile. Not the wind, not a loose pipe. Curious, he followed the sound through a narrow hallway he hadn't noticed before. The door creaked as he pushed it open. What he saw froze him mid-step. In the far corner of a dim storage room sat two small figures hunched over battered sewing machines. The older girl, perhaps 9, moved with an eerie sort of grace, her tiny hands guiding fabric through the machine with the focus of someone twice her age. Beside her, a younger girl no more than 6 fought against drooping eyelids as she stitched a seam. They were pale, gaunt, their clothes worn thin. The air smelled of dust and sweat. A flickering desk lamp barely illuminated their workspace. Victor couldn't speak. His throat tightened. These were children. Alone, working in near darkness, in his building. "Hey, what are you doing here?" His voice cracked louder than he intended. The older girl looked up, eyes wide, yet oddly unafraid. "We're finishing uniforms," she said quietly. "For school, we have to." Victor stepped closer, heart pounding. "Where are your parents?" "Our mom is sick." The girl replied, her voice steady. "We come here after school so we can make money." The pile of garments beside her looked shockingly professional. Clean seams, perfect hems. No child should be capable of such craftsmanship, yet here it was undeniable. "My name's Maya, that's my sister Isabel." Victor's mind raced. Liability, trespassing, lawsuits. But beneath it all, something deeper stirred, an image of himself at 8, watching his single mother collapse from exhaustion. He swallowed hard. "This isn't safe," he said softer now. "You shouldn't be here." Maya's gaze didn't waver. "If we don't finish the order, they won't pay us. And we need the money. Please, don't tell." Victor felt the weight of her words settle in his chest like lead. These girls weren't delinquents or runaways. They were survivors. In that moment, the shimmering facade of Victor's success cracked. All the business school mantras, the polished deals, they meant nothing here. Here, two little girls were stitching their futures beneath a world that had abandoned them. He handed Maya $100 from his wallet. "Take this. Go home." But she pushed it back. "We can't take money we didn't earn." Victor's vision blurred. He looked away, ashamed of his own tears. How had this city failed them so completely? What Victor didn't yet know was this: the discovery of Maya and Isabel would unravel everything he thought he knew about success, family, and redemption. It would force him into a battle against forces far more corrupt than he imagined, and lead him to confront the ghosts of his own past. And as he locked the steel door behind him that night, Victor couldn't shake one haunting thought. What if no one else had found them? Because sometimes the greatest lessons in life come not from the boardroom, but from the shadows we're too afraid to enter. In the days that followed, Victor's obsession grew. He had to know more. Who were these girls? How had they slipped through every safety net? And why did their resilience feel so achingly familiar? That's where our story truly begins. Now, let's step deeper into the invisible lives behind closed doors. Victor Hastings had barely slept. The image of two frail girls sewing alone in the shadows of his steel mill haunted him, replaying in every quiet moment. It wasn't just shock anymore. It was something deeper. Something pulling him toward a truth he hadn't dared face in years. By sunrise, he was already back at the site. The door he'd locked was ajar, a thin crack revealing the same faint light inside. But the girls were gone. Only the quiet hum of abandoned sewing machines remained, threads still trailing through unfinished garments. On the work table lay a small folded note. "We'll be back. We need this. Please don't stop us. Maya and Isabel." Victor's chest tightened. He couldn't just walk away. He needed answers not out of curiosity, but out of a growing sense of responsibility he hadn't expected to feel. He made some calls, first to a private investigator he trusted, then to the local school district. It was a long shot, but sometimes the simplest questions opened the biggest doors. By late afternoon, a name surfaced: Maya Reyes. 9 years old. Enrolled at Matt Tabor Elementary. Occasional absences flagged no known address on file, marked as transient. The younger sister, Isabel, had no formal school record. Victor's stomach dropped. These children were invisible to the very systems meant to protect them. He drove through Portland's side streets, guided only by instinct, and a half-remembered address scribbled in an old school form. The Reyes residence, when he found it, was a sagging duplex tucked between two graffiti-tagged warehouses. A battered Honda sat out front. The windows were dark. He hesitated. This wasn't his world. He was a man of glass towers and boardrooms. But something stronger than pride pushed him up the front steps. He knocked. Silence. Then a faint voice. "Who is it, Victor Hastings?" he said gently. I saw Maya and Isabel at the mill. I'm here to help." A long pause. Then the door creaked open, revealing a woman in her 30s, gaunt and pale, leaning heavily against the frame. Her hair hung limp over hollow cheeks, and her eyes, dark pools of exhaustion, narrowed with suspicion. "Sophia Reyes," she rasped. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," Victor replied softly, "but I need to understand. The girls, they shouldn't be alone like that." A bitter smile flickered across her face. "You think I don't know that. You think I haven't tried." Her voice cracked. "But when you can't pay rent, can't buy medicine, no one listens. The world stops seeing you." Victor swallowed hard. The weight of her words struck deeper than any business loss he'd ever faced. Inside the apartment was sparse, two small mattresses pushed against the wall, A faded couch, a cluttered kitchenette. Medical bills lay scattered across the table next to a worn sewing kit. Isabel peeked shyly from behind a curtain, clutching a frayed teddy bear. Maya stood protectively in front of her. Victor knelt to their level. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, "I promise. But this isn't safe. There has to be a better way." Maya's chin lifted. "We have to work. Mom needs medicine. I can sew fast. Isabel can help. We're fine." "No," Sophia whispered hoarsely from behind them. "You're not fine. You're surviving. That's not the same." Victor felt the sting of truth in her words. How many times had he mistaken survival for success in his own life? That night he sat in his penthouse surrounded by sterile perfection, unable to escape the raw humanity he'd witnessed. The stark contrast gnawed at him. For all his wealth, he had never known such determination as he saw in those two little girls. Driven by restless urgency, he called Claire Nguyen, a longtime acquaintance and respected elementary teacher known for her work with at-risk families. When he explained the situation, her voice softened. "I know, Maya," she said. "Brightest girl in her class when she's there. Too proud to ask for help. I've tried. Sophia used to be one of the best seamstresses in the community. When her husband died and the factory closed, everything spiraled." Amelia paused. "There are more families like them than you think, Victor. The invisible ones. They slip through every safety net because they're too proud, too scared, or too broken to ask." Victor stared out at the city lights. How had he ignored this world for so long? "Help me," he said finally. "I don't know how, but I need to do something." The next morning he returned to the Reyes apartment, this time with groceries, warm clothes, and a sincere offer. "I know money can't fix everything," he told Sophia, "but maybe I can help buy you some time. Let the girls rest. Let's find a safer way." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. "You don't owe us anything." "No," Victor replied, "but maybe I owe it to myself, to the boy I once was. I lost my mother young. I know what it's like to carry too much too soon." Maya watched him carefully, her gaze old beyond her years. Finally she whispered, "Okay, but only if we can still sew. We have to finish the order." Victor smiled gently. "We'll find a way, together." It was a small moment, but in that fragile exchange, trust began to grow. That night, Victor sat with Amelia, poring over city data and nonprofit directories. The numbers were staggering in Portland alone. An estimated 200 children lived in unstable housing, many helping to support their families in quiet desperation. How had he missed this? How had the city he loved allowed so many children to become invisible? As dawn broke over the Willamette, Victor made a quiet vow: these girls would not fall through the cracks again. Not on his watch. And so began a journey that would test his resolve, unravel hidden truths, and force him to confront not only the broken systems around him, but the shadows within himself. Victor Hastings had never thought of himself as naive. In the world of high finance and corporate takeovers, he'd learned long ago that trust was currency, and a scarce one at that. But nothing had prepared him for how swiftly the currents of betrayal could sweep through something as simple as an attempt to help two little girls. At first, the progress seemed almost hopeful. Claire Nguyen had connected him with a social worker named Miriam, a kind woman with silver-streaked hair and a reputation for fighting for vulnerable families. Through Miriam, Victor learned that Sophia's condition had worsened, her breathing shallow, her body frail. A hospital bed had been set up in their apartment's living room, paid for in part by Victor's quiet donations. Maya and Isabel now spent their afternoons in Victor's newly arranged sewing space within the steel mill, under Amelia's gentle supervision. The girls laughed more freely, their small hands learning new patterns and techniques. For the first time in months, they seemed like children again. But beneath the fragile peace trouble was brewing. It began with a sharp knock at Victor's penthouse door one rain-slicked evening. Noah Bennett, his attorney, a tall, soft-spoken man with eyes that missed nothing, stood on the threshold holding a thick envelope. "You need to see this," Jamal said grimly. Victor opened the folder to find a series of legal notices and complaints. Someone had petitioned Child Protective Services to review Sophia Reyes' parental fitness and initiate proceedings to remove Maya and Isabel from her custody. The documents cited Sophia's illness, the children's alleged exposure to unsafe environments, and most damningly acclaimed that Victor himself had engaged in unmonitored contact with minors without proper legal clearance. Victor's pulse hammered. Who would do this? Jamal hesitated, then handed over another sheet, a public statement, filed by Clara Jensen, the local neighborhood association chairwoman. Clara, who had previously expressed concern about gentrification in the area, had been quietly gathering signatures and spreading rumors about Victor's intentions. She'd even managed to leak a decade-old donation he had made to a foundation that, unbeknownst to him at the time, had later been linked to a disgraced foster care network. "Clara wants the girls out of that home," Jamal said, "and she wants you out of the neighborhood's business. She's spinning this as a crusade for child welfare, but it's about property and power." Victor's hands clenched. How could an act of compassion be weaponized so easily? In the days that followed, the situation escalated. CPS scheduled a formal hearing to determine whether Maya and Isabel should be placed in temporary foster care. Victor attended every meeting, bringing evidence of the support he and Amelia had provided, along with glowing statements from Miriam and other community advocates. Yet Clara's campaign had already sown doubt. "He's a billionaire exploiting vulnerable children for PR," one anonymous complaint said. "This is a vanity project, not genuine care." Victor wanted to scream, but he held steady, driven by a singular image, Maya's small frame, curled protectively around her sister during a cold hospital night, whispering promises she couldn't possibly keep. The hearing date approached like a storm cloud. Maya, sensing the tension, grew quieter. Isabel clung to Victor's hand whenever they visited the mill. One evening, as Victor prepared legal documents with Jamal, Amelia rushed into his office, her face pale. "Clara's gone too far," she said, breathless. "She's planted false testimony. A former employee of yours, someone fired years ago, has been persuaded to claim you have a history of inappropriate conduct around children." Victor's heart plummeted. "That's a lie." "I know," Amelia said fiercely. "But perception matters. If this sticks, you could lose everything, not just the girls." Victor barely slept that night. In the quiet hours, he watched over Maya and Isabel as they dozed in the safe room he'd prepared for them. Isabel's tiny fingers still clutched the hem of Maya's nightgown. The next morning, Miriam arrived with new hope. "I have something," she said. A former friend of Clara's came forward. "She has emails proving Clara orchestrated the smear campaign. It's not foolproof, but it's a start." Jamal moved quickly, filing an injunction and presenting the evidence to the judge ahead of the hearing. The courtroom was packed, pressured by public curiosity and Clara's well-oiled narrative. Victor sat in the front row, his heart in his throat as Maya was called to the stand. The little girl's voice was steady, though her hands trembled. "My mom is sick," Maya said. "She always told us to be brave. Victor didn't make us so. He helped us stop. He makes sure we're safe." The judge's gaze softened. "Do you trust Mr. Hastings?" Maya looked straight at Victor, her storm-gray eyes shimmering. "I trust him. And Isabel does too." When Victor himself was called to testify, the courtroom held its breath. He spoke plainly, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't come into this for charity," he admitted. "At first, I thought I was saving 2 kids, but the truth is, they saved me. They reminded me what matters beyond profit and headlines." He paused, struggling for composure. "If I lose today, so be it. But don't punish these girls for the sins of a broken system." The judge reviewed the late-submitted emails exposing Clara's manipulations. With a sharp rap of the gavel, she dismissed the false testimony and ruled that Maya and Isabel would remain under Victor's temporary guardianship pending a full review. Tears streamed down Sophia's face as the news reached her hospital bed. Maya and Isabel clung to Victor in the hallway, sobbing with relief. Yet, as they drove home that night, a lingering question gnawed at Victor's heart. The DNA test results he had requested on a hunch that no longer felt like coincidence had arrived in his inbox. With trembling fingers, he opened the file. 99.9% probability. Maya Reyes was his niece. Victor stared at the screen, the air leaving his lungs. His brother, lost to an overdose years before, had left behind a child no one had known, and now fate had led her into his life. He closed the laptop and looked at the sleeping girls in the back seat. Everything had changed, and the hardest part was still to come. The late afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of the mill-turned-community workshop, casting warm streaks of light across rows of sewing machines and bolts of colorful fabric. The transformation was remarkable. Just weeks ago, this place had been a crumbling ruin. Now it buzzed softly with life hope stitched into every seam. And yet for Victor Hastings, the joy of that transformation was shadowed by a revelation that had turned his world inside out. Maya was his niece. The DNA report still sat in his briefcase, its clinical language echoing in his mind. 99.9% probability. He was family to her in a way neither of them had imagined. The weight of it filled every breath he took, every glance he cast toward her and Isabel. For days, Victor had said nothing, unsure how or when to tell them. He feared disrupting the fragile trust they'd built. Would Maya feel betrayed? Would she even want him in her life if she knew the truth? One quiet evening, as Maya carefully guided Isabel through a new embroidery pattern, Victor sat nearby, watching them with a heart too full for words. The sisters were laughing, a sound that had become a balm to the ache in his chest. For the first time since their world had begun unraveling, they sounded like children. When Isabel grew tired and curled up with her sketch pad, Victor cleared his throat. "Maya," he began softly. She looked up, sensing the weight in his tone. "There's something important I need to tell you." Her gray eyes, so hauntingly familiar now, met his. She waited. "You know I've been trying to help because I care about you and your sister," Victor said, slowly. "But I've learned something that changes what I thought I knew." He took a breath, steadying himself. "I had a brother. You never knew him. He died years ago. What I didn't know until now is that your mother, Sophia's sister, was once with him. And you, Maya, you're my niece." For a long moment, silence hung between them. Maya's small hand stilled on her fabric. Her lips parted, eyes widening, not in fear, but in stunned disbelief. "I'm your family," she whispered. Victor's throat tightened. "Yes. I didn't know before, I swear, but now that I do, it doesn't change how much I care about you. It just means I have even more reason to be here for you." A single tear slipped down Maya's cheek. "All this time, I thought we had no one." Victor knelt beside her gently, taking her hands in his. "You do. You've always had each other, and now you have me too, if you want that." Maya flung her arms around him with a sob that cracked open something deep in his heart. He held her tightly, tears blurring his vision. In that embrace, the walls of isolation they'd both carried for so long began to crumble. Later, when the girls were tucked safely into bed, Victor sat with Amelia and Jamal, the report open between them. "We have to make this permanent," he said. "No more temporary guardianship, no more limbo." Amelia smiled gently. "You're not the same man I met a month ago, Victor." He shook his head. "I was blind. I spent my life chasing success, thinking it would fill the emptiness. But these girls, they've taught me what real worth is." Jamal nodded. "Then we'll start the adoption process. It won't be easy, not with Clara's influence lingering, but we'll fight." Victor knew they would, and he would fight with everything he had. As news of Victor's guardianship spread, the community began to shift. Support poured in from unexpected places. Former steelworkers, once displaced by the mill's closure, volunteered to teach at the workshop. Local businesses donated supplies, and slowly the Reyes and Sisters Community Workshop became a beacon for single mothers seeking both skill and stability. One afternoon, as Victor oversaw the installation of new classroom equipment, a familiar figure appeared at the door. Clara Jensen. Her posture was stiff, her expression guarded. "I came to apologize," she said, her voice clipped. "I was wrong." Victor studied her warily. "Because you lost Clara's shoulders sagged." "No, because I saw the hearing. I saw those girls. I didn't want to believe that someone like you could care, but you do, and I let fear and pride blind me." For a long moment, Victor said nothing. Then he extended a hand. "For their sake, we move forward." Clara hesitated, then shook it. "Thank you. If there's any way I can help now, I'd like to." As Clara left, Amelia approached, eyes shining. That she whispered is what change looks like. Victor smiled faintly. He'd learned that lesson well. Sometimes change wasn't about grand gestures. It was about choosing love over ego, compassion over comfort. But the path ahead still held challenges. Sophia's condition was worsening. The girls would soon face the greatest loss of their young lives. And Victor, he would have to be strong enough to carry them through it. That night, as he sat beside Sophia's hospital bed, her frail hand found his. "You've done more than I ever dreamed," she whispered. "Promise me you'll keep them safe. Keep them together." Victor's voice broke. "I promise. With everything I am." She smiled faintly, tears glistening. "Then I can rest." As dawn painted the sky in soft pastels, Sophia Reyes took her final breath, surrounded by love. In the quiet that followed, Victor gathered the girls in his arms, their sobs echoing through the sterile room. He held them as they wept, whispering the same vow again and again. "You're not alone anymore. You never will be." The hardest part was far from over, but for the first time they faced it as a family. And for Victor Hastings, a man who had once measured life in profits and prestige that was the greatest wealth of all. The first rays of spring sunlight filtered through the windows of the Reyes and Sisters Community Workshop. The hum of sewing machines mingled with the cheerful chatter of women and children. It was a scene of life of hope stitched into fabric, and Victor Hastings stood quietly at its heart, still awed by how far they had come. 6 months had passed since Sophia's passing. The ache of her absence lingered especially for Maya and Isabel. But through their grief, they had found a new rhythm, a life not defined by loss but by love and resilience. And in that time, Victor, too, had been transformed. The community center had grown beyond his expectations. What began as a humble sewing workshop now housed a daycare for working mothers, a job training program, and free classes in basic business skills. Mothers who once felt trapped in poverty now earned incomes, created beautiful garments, and most importantly, stood proudly beside their children. Victor often marveled at the energy that filled the space. On any given day, rows of women worked side by side, Hispanic grandmothers, teaching young Somali refugees, Vietnamese seamstresses, guiding single moms fresh out of shelters. The workshop had become a tapestry of stories, each stitch a testament to courage. And at the center of it all was Maya. At just 10 years old, Maya had become a quiet leader. She spent hours after school helping younger children learn basic sewing techniques, often repeating words her mother once used. The thread tells you where it wants to go. Listen with your hands. Isabel thrived in the center's new art corner. Her drawings of stars and flowers now decorated the hallways. Her laughter was the sweetest sound. Victor knew proof that even the deepest wounds could begin to heal with love. One crisp Saturday morning, the center hosted its first public showcase. Friends, neighbors, and local officials gathered to admire the work of the women and hear their stories. Victor stood with Claire Nguyen and Noah Bennett, watching as Maya nervously approached the small stage. She held a quilt square in her trembling hands. It depicted a tree with deep roots and wide-spreading branches, its leaves embroidered with symbols, a sewing needle, a sketchbook, 2 clasped hands. My mom used to say that families are like quilts. Maya began, her voice wavering. They're made of different pieces, some old, some new. Some parts are worn, but they still hold the whole together. This center is part of our quilt now. You all are. Victor blinked away tears as applause filled the room. In that moment, he saw not just his niece, but a young girl becoming a beacon for others. After the showcase, Maya shyly approached him. "Uncle Victor," she whispered. The title still felt new to her lips, but warmed Victor's heart each time. "I want to do more, for other kids like us." Victor knelt, looking into her determined eyes. "You already are," he said softly. "But we can do more together." And they did. Within weeks, the center expanded its after-school program, offering tutoring and art classes. Local volunteers poured in, inspired by the girl's story and the workshop's growing impact. One of those volunteers surprised everyone. Clara Jensen appeared one morning, her usual crisp attire replaced by a simple cardigan and jeans. She approached Victor with uncharacteristic humility. "I know I can't undo what I did," she said quietly, "but I'd like to help now, if you'll let me." Victor studied her for a moment, then nodded. Everyone deserves a second chance. Clara became a dedicated advocate, using her connections to secure new grants and expand outreach. Her transformation was living proof that redemption was always possible, a lesson not lost on the center's families. As the months passed, Victor also embraced new roles. His penthouse, once a sterile symbol of wealth, now echoed with the laughter of 2 little girls and the quiet chaos of family life. Mornings began with shared breakfasts. Evenings ended with story time and whispered promises. One night, as Victor tucked Isabel into bed, she clutched his hand. "Uncle Victor, do you think Mommy can see us?" "I do," he whispered, "and I think she's very proud." In the adjoining room, Maya worked on a new quilt. This one featured a large heart at its center, surrounded by smaller hearts bearing the names of each woman and child in the center. At the top, in elegant script, she embroidered, "Built by love, bound by choice." Victor watched her from the doorway, his chest tight with emotion. He thought back to the man he had been driven by, numbers and acquisitions, blind to the quiet struggles of those around him. The girls had changed him not through grand gestures, but through the simple, unwavering power of love and resilience. He had once believed that success meant reaching the top alone. Now he knew it meant lifting others as you climbed. Word of the center's success spread. Requests came in from cities as far as Seattle and San Francisco, asking for guidance on replicating the model. Victor began working with Amelia and Jamal to create a nonprofit foundation, one that would empower communities across the country. But for all the growth and accolades, the true heart of the center remained unchanged. Each day, mothers stitched new futures for their families. Each night, 2 little girls fell asleep knowing they were safe, loved, and no longer alone. One sunny afternoon, as Victor walked Maya and Isabel home from the workshop, Maya slipped her hand into his. "Do you think Mommy ever thought we'd have this?" she asked softly. Victor smiled, tears prickling his eyes. "I think she hoped for it. And you made it happen." Maya squeezed his hand. "We made it happen." And in that simple statement lay the deepest truth of all. Family wasn't about blood or wealth or titles. It was about showing up, keeping promises, and choosing love over and over again. Victor looked at the girls beside him, then at the bustling streets of Portland alive with new possibility. They had planted new roots in this city and each other, and as they walked forward hand in hand, there was no limit to what their growing family could achieve. Victor Hastings had spent much of his life believing that success was measured in numbers, in quarterly reports and real estate portfolios, in the gleam of a luxury car. But one rainy afternoon in the shadows of an abandoned steel mill, that illusion shattered. What began as a routine property inspection became an extraordinary journey of the heart, one that led him to two young girls, Maya and Isabel Reyes, sewing quietly in exhaustion, fighting for survival, in a world that had failed to protect them. Through the following months, Victor's life was transformed in ways he never could have foreseen. He learned of the girls' tragic family history, their mother's failing health, and the impossible burdens Maya had carried on her small shoulders. In facing the injustices of bureaucracy and betrayal, most notably, the smear campaign orchestrated by Clara Jensen, Victor discovered a well of compassion and courage within himself. The revelation that Maya was his own niece deepened his resolve and forged a bond that neither time nor adversity could undo. Yet the heart of this story was never just about Victor. It was about the strength of two sisters determined to stay together, about a dying mother's final wish for her children's safety, and about a fractured community learning to heal. Through the creation of the Reyes and Sisters Community Workshop, Victor not only honored Sophia's legacy, but also gave countless other families a path to empowerment and dignity. Along the way, even former adversaries like Clara found redemption and purpose, proving that change is always possible when we choose compassion over judgment. As Maya's voice echoed through that first public showcase, families are like quilts made of different pieces. Victor understood a profound truth. Family isn't just about blood, it's about choice. It's about the love we offer, the promises we keep, and the courage to show up, especially when it's hard. He had once sought solitude in his towering success. Now he found joy in bedtime stories and whispered goodnights, in watching Maya and Isabel blossom into the bright, resilient souls they were always meant to be. And that is the moral of this story, a lesson in empathy, patience, and humility. In our fast-paced, achievement-driven world, it is easy to overlook the invisible struggles of those around us. Too often, we rush to judgment without understanding the full picture. This story reminds us that real strength lies not in building walls, but in extending hands. It teaches us that redemption is always within reach, that people can change, and that love, when given freely and without expectation, has the power to mend even the deepest wounds. So, how can we apply this to our own lives? Start by looking closer. See the people society often overlooks: the single parents, the struggling children, the elderly neighbor. Choose kindness in your daily interactions. Offer patience when frustration arises. And when life presents you with an unexpected opportunity to help, no matter how inconvenient or uncomfortable, lean in. You never know whose life you might change, and you never know how that act of compassion might transform your own. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the power we all hold to make a difference, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing these meaningful, heartfelt stories that inspire and uplift. Thank you for watching and for believing in the goodness we can create together. Stay tuned because we have many more incredible stories to come.